Could I ask people to take their seats if they haven't done so already, please? Thank you. It's a natural silhouette. Natural spotlight. Not in the evening. Well, good evening and welcome to St Luke's and to this general election hustings. It's the second time we've held a hustings at St Luke's. The last one was in 2019, and that was in the middle of the winter. It was dark and cold and damp outside. So this is quite a different experience, and actually for us sitting up here, we can't really see you very well because the sun's shining so brightly, like a natural spotlight on us. But that'll probably change as we go through the evening, and we'll all be left in darkness. But hopefully not in darkness metaphorically, because we'll be enlightened by our candidates about what's, how they view different aspects. I hope that we will approach the whole event with a positive and attitude and a polite attitude, with a real desire to be able to hear and listen to what each candidate has to say on the different topics that we're going to discuss. So if you agree with someone, you're free to clap, maybe cheer, but if you don't agree with them, best not to cheer. Let's try and keep it polite and positive as we go through. We had, I also have to say that there are 3 independent candidates standing for the election as well. Graham Birchall, Paul Holton, who you probably met on the way in, and Mo Shafai. I took the decision before I knew who was standing that would limit it to 5 people, because otherwise it just takes up so much time asking lots of different questions, and I think we'd probably fail to squeeze everyone on the front here anyway. That is obviously disappointing to the independent candidates, but if you don't like what the people up here are saying, then you've got someone else to vote for anyway. So there you go. And you can talk to them afterwards as well. We asked for questions to be submitted beforehand online, and we actually had 44 different questions submitted, which is fantastic. I was hoping they'd all be on a few different topics, and we could just choose one from each topic. There's actually quite a variety of topics as well. So you may come and feel that we don't address the topics that you're interested in, but we've tried to choose ones that are more relevant to people locally, speak more about the personality of each of the candidates, so you get to know who you're voting for as your local MP, and those questions that were the more popular ones, the more ones that sort of raised more questions about them. So that's how we selected the questions. We hope to at least 7, possibly up to 10 questions tonight, and give each candidate up to 2 minutes to answer each question. So, just to say who's here, should have started with that. So we've got Steve, representing the Green Party, on your far left. They're not quite to the left. Paul, representing the Reform Party. And then we've got Polly for Labour, Helen for the Conservatives, and Jay for the Liberal Democrats. I pronounced all your names correctly, I hope. Yeah. Give them all a round of applause. Before we started, we sort of cast lots to see who would go first, and I'm going to invite each candidate just to have about up to 2 minutes introducing themselves before we get into questions. So Steve came up with lot number 1, so I'm going to invite Steve to make a start.
All right, so look, evening everybody. First thing, can you hear me at the back? Great, good start. As Paul mentioned, we do have the sun coming right in our faces, which is a great thing, but if I'm sort of squinting occasionally, don't read anything into it, it's the sun. All right. But look, thank you for coming to this hustings. You are supporting an important part of the democratic process. And around the world, democracy is under attack. So you're doing something important by being here today. As Paul said, I'm Steve Roberts, your Green Party candidate. I'm standing to be your MP because I love Thanet. I've lived here for nearly 10 years. The people, the beaches, our thriving arts, and they are thriving in the face of adversity. I want to represent and fight for everything I love about Thanet and everything good about Thanet. Many people have never been so disillusioned with politics. One of the reasons I'm standing as a Green Party candidate is to give people who believe in a better, a fairer, a more peaceful future a reason to vote and to give you a party to vote for. Every election, more and more people choose to vote Green. Now, I want a better future for everyone, and I don't believe the traditional parties can deliver that for us. I'm standing because now isn't the time for compromise. Now is the time for real change. So, voting Green on the 4th of July is your way of showing you believe in a fairer, greener world, right? And that's worth fighting for. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And over to Jay from the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to be here. Look, I'm a family man who has brought up 2 children. I know how hard it is. Families in Thanet are suffering as well under the cost of living crisis. There are small businesses in Pison Road, maybe even one of Thornley pubs, where the employees are looking for higher wages to fight the cost of living. But actually, it's very difficult for the employers to give them that. There's a shortage of higher paying jobs in this beautiful island. Add to that, lack of affordable housing, lack of social housing. So it's a vicious cycle, really, that we need to get ourselves out of. And how do we do it? It's really for the teenagers, the youngsters, the 17-year-olds from Chatham School here. It's their future. We have to stop making losses at the port, marina, and the winter gardens. We have to stop this cycle of high debt and the cost of living issue. And we're doing that by creating new jobs. The Lib Dems are against raising taxes. We want to get away with business rates. If you do that, the employers will actually offer more in terms of wages to employees. But with those savings, we are going to invest it in better A&E at the QEQM. We want to get an urgent treatment center in to release the pressure on the long wait lists. We are protecting our farmlands with £1 billion and with a national food strategy. And we want to keep investing in sort of wind and renewable energy, which will again create more jobs. So the last point I'd say is that we have a centrist position. Politics has become very divided. We have a unified agenda to grow, to create jobs, to get a better standard of living, and importantly, also control immigration. And I hope we can talk about that later when we come to that point.
Okay, thank you, Jay. And next up is Paul from the Reform Party.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Paul Webb. I'm representing Reform UK. I think we can all agree, no matter what our political persuasions are, that Britain is broken. And we have, on the 4th of July, the chance to do something about it. I'd urge everybody, no matter how they vote, that they should vote. People fought and died for the right to vote, and I think it's incredibly important. Here at Reform UK, we believe that we have some of the best policies to put Britain back together again and start to really, really fix the broken promises from both left and right in this country. We've had 14 years of Tory government, we had 14 years of Labour government prior to that. And look at where we are now. And I would ask everybody to read our contract with the people, digest it, and on the 4th of July, really make a difference in this country and vote for reform. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Next, it's Polly from the Labour Party.
Thanks very much. Hello, I'm Polly and I'd like to be your MP. I'm also going to apologise, not so much for the glaring of the light, but the peering over the glasses, because I can't get me varifocals to work. So apologies, I'm not trying to be stern, I'm just trying to make sure that I can see you. I've been campaigning for a very long time. I started off campaigning in the 80s in class, from the fact that my classrooms that I sat in were leaking, that we were sharing textbooks, that I was being taught by teachers who couldn't make ends meet. And those cuts made it harder to learn and harder to see a bright future. What I learned is that lots is wrong with the world and it's worth trying to change it. Now, some of the things that were wrong then are wrong now, and that's why I'm here. I think you and your families deserve better than you've had for the last 14 years. You deserve an NHS you can rely on to get an appointment when you need. You deserve to have confidence in the qualifications that your young people are getting that will lead to a good job here in Thanet, where they can earn enough to start their lives as adults. You deserve to be able to get to the end of the month before the money runs out, without a worry about the energy bill or the food bill or the rent that will break the bank. You deserve to be able to get about to see your family and friends, to be able to work and study and affordably rely on transport that is affordable and safe. You deserve decent mental health support, especially for those young people, to manage the challenges of growing up after the ravages of the pandemic. And you deserve to be able to swim in the sea, in one of our most precious environmental assets here in Thanet, without being worried about dirty pollution for profit. You deserve to be able to show that some of the big challenges of the world, those conflict and climate change, will be tackled by leaders who recognise their responsibilities and their importance and have the courage to tackle them, not turn their backs on the world and its problems. Young people deserve to have the confidence they will be able to leave home and start their own lives in their own home that is secure and affordable here in Thanet. And pensioners deserve to live with confidence that they will have a secure old age.
All you can answer to.
Yeah, everyone deserves also to have fun. That's something that politics, generally speaking, can't legislate for, but we should be able to create some space for people to thrive. Politics has tread far too heavily on people's lives for the past few years. I would argue we can change that.
Thank you, Polly. And for our final introduction, Helen Harrison from the Conservative Party.
Thank you. Well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Helen Harrison. I'm your Conservative candidate for this election. I haven't prepared an opening political speech because I thought you might want to just know a little bit about me as a candidate. So I grew up in a family of 7. My dad was a builder and my mum a stay-at-home mum. They had to work incredibly hard to provide for us. They believed in hard work, duty and personal responsibility, and that's how I've always lived my life. I'm a chartered physiotherapist. I've worked in the NHS. I've run my own physiotherapy business. I've been a governor of a general hospital, and as a counsellor, I was in charge of adult social care and healthcare in our area. And I think I have a good insight into that area of our life. So it won't surprise you to know that I have a real passion for adult social care and health. But far more than that, my life has been spent trying to help people, to improve people's lives. Now, we all here on this, I kind of call it a front bench, we all believe there are different ways to achieve that better life for people. But I believe that it starts with listening. So my pledge to you is that as your MP, that is what I will do. I will listen to you, I'll campaign for you, and I'll deliver for you. And I absolutely believe this to the tips of my toes, that my country comes first, my constituency second, and party a distant third. I will always put you first.
Thank you very much, Helen. We're going to try and have most questions asked from the floor, but the first question, the person who asked it isn't able to come after all, so I thought I'd ask it. And this is this. For each of the candidates, what are the personal qualities that you have that will make you a good MP? So what are the personal qualities that you have that will make you a good MP? And shall we start with Jay?
Well, I think resilience and aspiration. I funded my whole education, and I want the youth to do the same. I think having a sense of humor as well and a thick skin, which will be needed in order to restructure and take our country forward in so many different areas. The ability to talk to different people in different groups and bring them together. I've advised businesses, I've advised governments as well in the past, and I think that is a skill which is going to be important, particularly in East Thanet. And independence and authenticity. Look, I was in business, unlike some of the others who have been in politics, and I really do think that if we wait too long, our country will be broken beyond repair, particularly some of the coastal islands like this. And therefore, that authenticity and independence of thinking that I've always had throughout my career is what I'd bring as your MP.
Okay, thank you, Jay. And Paul, same question.
Thank you. Well, the truth of the matter is, I'm not a professional politician. I'm an ordinary person, just like many of you out there. I decided to stand because, quite frankly, I'd had enough of the professional political class that have run this country to the ground and onto its knees. And probably like many of you, I sat there and I thought, I could do a better job than that. Truth is, none of us know whether I can. But one thing I can promise you, and this is something from Nigel down right through the party, sometimes we'll say things to you that you don't agree with. Sometimes we'll say things to you that you don't want to happen. But we'll be truthful, we'll be honest, we'll answer the questions, we won't flip-flop and we won't dilly-dally around. How many times have you watched an interview with a politician where you've come away thinking, they didn't even answer the question that was asked to them? We've seen it today with them. Yeah. And it's something that happens all the time. And I've got young children that have grown up in Kent, were born in Kent, at Kent schools, so I know a lot about the area. I do a lot of work in Thanet. I live 30 minutes just outside of Thanet, and I'm down here quite often for work. And it's something that, from a normal day-to-day life, that we really, really have to change what's happened in this country with the professional political class, and we need to move on from that, and we need to vote for it.
Polly.
Thank you. I'll listen and I'll lead. I think those are two really important characteristics of somebody who is asking your permission to represent you in Parliament and in Westminster. I used to be a journalist, so I'm pretty fearless and determined, and I'm also fair, so I think that's important as well, and that means that I apply my judgment. My primary school teacher wrote on my report one year that I have a very strong sense of justice, which I suggest she probably wrote with gritted teeth. And my mum wasn't that pleased because she thought I meant I'd probably been getting into trouble. But sometimes I think that's probably what you need to do. And I also think one of the things, a lesson I learned from my mum when I was really small, was when a little girl was lost in the park and she burst into tears. I, very unhelpfully at the age of 3, burst into tears as well. And my mum ended up with 2 children crying. And she turned around to me and shook me and said, there's no point being unhappy and upset and angry. You've got to do something about it. That is the lesson that I've learned. I've been campaigning since the 80s. I fought for the miners, I fought for LGBT rights, I fought for women's rights. I know when it's worthwhile waving a placard, and I know when it's worthwhile being in the room. I will bring that experience to bear here in Thanet, and that is what I offer to you.
Thank you, Polly. Helen.
Thank you. As a physiotherapist, people come to me in pain and in fear, often whether they'll be able to work again, or hold their grandchildren, play football, all sorts of fears. And it was my job as a physiotherapist to gain their trust, because without that trust, I can't help them at all. They have to put their trust in you when they're in pain. And so the skills that I have are in being empathetic, kind, patient, listening and caring. And that is what I bring to you here in East Thanet.
Thank you, Helen. And lastly, Steve.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm somebody else who finds it very surprising. I'm here standing to be an MP, but I am. I've worked in health and social care for over 40 years as a mental health nurse and as a leader. And MPs need to be leaders. Now that experience means I know how to understand and solve problems. I know how to get things done. Anyone here who has worked in care will know that that 40 years of experience means I'm a resilient person, a tenacious person, I'm patient, I'm a good listener. And I care about the same things that you do. That's why I'm standing to be an MP. Southern Water dumping sewage into our seas and rivers. That makes me angry. East Thanet needs an MP who gets angry when companies responsible for essential services are privatised and assets stripped. Angry when our beaches are closed, when our business lose income, or even when their viability is threatened. A National Grid, responsible for an essential service. They're another private company, and we know what's next there. Assets stripped, when they're not busy ruining Minster marshes. I care about the cost of living crisis. I care about the appalling rates of violence against women in Thanet and around the country. And that's why I care that the leader of a political party last week stated that Andrew Tate is an important role model for men. I care because that's advocating violence against women. The housing crisis, the wrong housing being built in the wrong place, Save Minster marshes, and having something that Thanet can believe in and be proud of. And I care that Brexit has been a disaster. These are some of the personal qualities that will make me a good MP. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I think now we're going to have a question from the floor. And are you going to be asking it on behalf of someone, Peter? Who's asking the question?
I'll ask the next question.
Okay.
Okay, the next question has been submitted by Jacqueline Collins. The question is, could the candidates explain that with all the new houses being built in the area, what are your views on how our police, doctors, surgeries, fire brigade and hospitals are going to cope with the needs of a larger population in East Thanet?
Okay, thank you. So it's quite a broad-ranging question. Paul, how do you respond to that?
They're not going to cope. It's as simple as that, because they're not coping now, are they? I mean, you can see right across the board, whether it's from especially the doctors, policing, nothing is working because it's all been broken. It's all promises, we will do this, we will do that. We've heard this week, haven't we, about, we're going to build, I think it was 100 new doctors' surgeries from the Tories. Presumably these will be put alongside the 40 new hospitals that they haven't built. We've been promised so many things right across the board, and the truth of the matter is we're building lots and lots of properties, most of which won't be going to British people, and we haven't got the infrastructure. We haven't got the infrastructure to cope with the people that we have here now, without letting more and more people flood across the channel and into the country that are also going to need housing, also going to need doctors and policing. We're not coping now, and it's not going to change unless we vote for it.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, there's now space for the candidates to respond, maybe against some of the things that Paul said, maybe to agree with him, you never know. Polly.
I've got a personal pledge to you that there will be no new builds without infrastructure here in Thanet. And the reason why I'm so keen to make sure that we make that commitment and that I can keep to it is because Labour will change the planning laws so that we're no longer building just homes, but we're building communities. It is vital that we have those amenities. And I can tell you one of the reasons why you're so anxious about this now is because of what has happened under the previous Tory administration here in the council with the Tory government, which ended up with a planning framework which allowed a Tory council to put forward a plan building homes on farmland. That did not need to happen. They created those rules. The consequences is, for example, we've now also got, when you don't think about the infrastructure, you've got specific examples here. The Grange practice, which is suggesting having a new surgery at Westwood Cross. There's no bus service to support it. People are saying you can get off at Sainsbury's, but we know what it's like when you're ill. You don't want to have to walk that fast. Why build a whole new station at Thanet Parkway without a bus service that goes to it? That kind of that kind of lack of thinking is a lack of strategic planning for us as a community, and we are all losing out. We also need to recognise that there are people, adults in their 30s, living at home in their childhood bedrooms, sometimes with their partners, because they cannot afford to have a home. So that is why I'm committed to building communities, not just homes, because we know we need to be able to grow our communities so that people can have not only the facilities that we all need, but also to be able to start their adult lives. Instead, with the Tories, you've had abandoned housing targets and only for, homes that have been built that have not been affordable for local people, no commitment to council housing, which would absolutely transform the prospects of so many people here in Thanet.
Okay, Helen, how do you respond to that as the Conservative candidate?
Well, thank you. So I find myself in some agreement with Polly in terms of the planning laws governing our country at the moment needing reform. Because you just have to take half a look around our beautiful area here in East Thanet and see how much farmland is disappearing, our green wedge being built over, and that just isn't good enough. You know, there's lots of places where housing could be built in this country, but we've taken a really huge amount here, and that has caused stress and strain on our local structures, our local services. Now, I think another part of the planning process that needs to be reformed is actually the part that allows us to get on and build that vital infrastructure. So, where I used to live, we are having one of those 40 new hospitals. It's at least 10 years now in the planning. It just goes round and round in circles with the planning process. And it is just not good enough. That is why we don't get things built quickly in this country that we need. So that needs to be changed. Part of it, by the way, is the lengthy programmes of consultation that all of these things go through that stymie the progress of vital infrastructure being built. So I want to see it being made easier for our services to be developed, our schools to be built, our GP practices to come forward. But at the same time, I want to say, stop. Here in East Thanet, we have enough housing. And I would also just like to say, on the whole affordable housing side of things, we do need more, but we also need to make sure, I think, that it is for people from East Thanet, rather than people from elsewhere. I don't mean from abroad, I mean, you know, because, you know, our London boroughs use our housing stock here to place people. Thank you.
Hey, Steve.
All right, thank you. Well, firstly, planning laws need to be changed so they favour communities, not developers, and that's something the Green Party is very committed to. Oh, people live in houses, they live in flats and they pay taxes to fund the services we all need. But in East Thanet, overdevelopment means without radical action, our existing resources will not cope. We are facing a disaster in East Thanet. Right. Police, doctors' surgeries, fire brigade, hospitals, they were all asked about in the question. We can add water to that, and schools, and green spaces, and green transport. Last year, Thanet Green Party called for a moratorium on all housing building in Thanet. Now, it's unfortunate that the wider council did not feel they had the authority to put one in place. Now, it was a radical proposal, but we need radical action. Without radical action, our existing resources will not cope. And we need to stop even more unnecessary housing being built on our farmland. But how? It is generally acknowledged that the Office of National Statistics data on which our current housing numbers are based is wrong. As a result, we've been lumbered with a local plan that designates so much of our prime agricultural land to build too many mostly unnecessary houses that don't meet the needs of local people either. And it didn't need to be this way. The main responsibility for this does not sit with Thanet District Council. It sits with the Tory government who forced the council to adopt the flawed local plan and who have constantly refused to allow the plan to be revisited. We need to revise the local plan. That's the only way our services are going to cope in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And last on this question, Jay.
So we have a Labour-led council, we've had a Conservative MP. This is an island with water on three sides, right? When the national limits were set, 17,000 new homes by 2031, that was the time to push back, a bit like I think what Penzance did, and try and reduce those limits. So if I was your MP, we would do it preemptively. You know, there's a culture of complaining that one has seeped into our politics, and we have to start thinking and talking about solutions. And our solution, the Lib Dem agenda, is that any new housing ought to be, you know, social housing and affordable, but offered to Thanet residents first. And we would have a process to do that, including, by the way, a lot of people fail credit checks, and then it goes outside to DFLs, as Helen was referencing. But you can stop that and giving the most destitute and disabled perhaps a guarantee as well. The question was also about healthcare and police. We need more police. We're losing, as I said in my opening remarks, 2 million a year on directly managing the port and marina. We want to stop that, use that cash for policing on the community policing. It's part of a national agenda. Police commission officers, and that can take drugs and crimes off streets. An urgent treatment center so that you're not waiting 24 hours in A&E at the QEQM. And that should be in town. It takes £60 to go to Estuary View and back. I don't know if you saw the program, I think it was Question Time, where there are GPs who are essentially not working. We need to because the GP surgeries can't afford them, we need to redeploy that. The big issue here is that a lot of the GPs are going to private practices for higher incomes, and we need to formulate a way to stop that. But I think an urgent treatment center would help in protecting health. So the last point I would say is that the key is to make sure Thanet residents get first dibs on all housing, but to push back in the national national housing limits in the next review, which is coming up. It's certainly not 17,000, it should be much less, and I pledge to do that for you.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is on one aspect of that question, really, the NHS. This is the one we had the most questions about. And I invite Candy Gregory, if she's here. Is she here? Yep. So wait for Peter to come round. Peter claims to play cricket and run very fast, you know.
Is it good to go? Thank you. Okay. Evening, everyone. This is an NHS-related question. There are 150,000 healthcare professionals vacancies in the NHS currently. The workforce is undervalued, underpaid, and exhausted. Politicians have yet to address the retention crisis in the NHS. Privatisation is not the answer to our nation's health issues, and politicians must refrain from accepting funding from private healthcare profiteers. What will you do to stop the doctors and nurses leaving? Does your party accept money from private healthcare profiteers? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Candy. My wife's a nurse, so this is an important question I think that needs to be asked. Polly, what will you do about it?
Thank you. It's a really good question, Candy, and particularly in the context of Thanet, because when I've talked to other people across the country about this, people will say, yeah, no, it's shocking, you know, where I'm an MP in Manchester. And I'll say, I know it's really bad, and it's got really bad over the last 14 years, but in coastal communities like Thanet, this isn't just a thing of the last 10 years, it's chronic and it's over decades. And recruitment and retention of NHS, quality NHS staff in places like Thanet and others, Worthing, Hastings, Brighton, Eastbourne, Lowestoft, Blackpool, all of those are all finding that the same issue. So we need to, and this is what I've been talking to Wes Streeting, that hopefully the future Health Secretary, to establish a coastal communities NHS compact for us to reform those contracts in order to be able to encourage our NHS staff to come here and to stay here. Because when we look at how many people move to this community because it's so lovely, why is it that we struggle to retain those staff? Now, a lot of that is to do with the terms and conditions, like I'm sure Candy's going to talk about. And people are exhausted over the last 14 years because what they are on is an endless treadmill of thinking they will never get to the end of those ever-extending waiting lists, which is why we are committing to pay that those NHS staff extra, to work the weekends and evenings. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, I'm already working the weekends and evenings. What on earth are you talking about? In some of the big hospitals, they have already done this, and the difference is the motivation of people thinking, actually, I'm starting to whittle away at that. I am managing to achieve something which is really good and getting paid extra to do it, has turned round the performances of those hospitals. So I believe that's a really important thing for us to do, as well as commit to doubling the number of medical school places so that we have the doctors and nurses we need in the long term for our NHS.
Okay, thank you, Polly. Helen.
Thank you. So, as somebody who's worked in the NHS, I'm very familiar with how it feels to be in the NHS. And I know that everybody from the doctors, the nurses, the physios, the occupational therapists, the radiographers, the cleaners, from top to bottom, they're very proud of the work they do. Over pretty much year on year on year, the NHS has more and more and more funding. And unfortunately does not seem to be improving at the rate you'd expect for that level of extra funding. And I think that's down to the way our NHS is run. Now, part of the question you asked was about privatisation. So I'm going to tell you a very quick story. Back where I used to live, we have an urgent care centre. At some point, the clinical commissioning group wanted to close that urgent care centre. Everybody was up in arms. It was just about the best service in town. So the Conservative group, the Conservatives, fought against the closure. The Labour people in the area fought against the closure, and so did the public. We kept it open. That was built by a private company and run by a private company, and it was the most valued service in town. Frankly, they cared about having the right care in the right place at the right time. That's all I care about. I have no ideological baggage about who provides it.
Thank you. Steve.
All right. First thing, my party does not and will never accept money from healthcare profiteers. I want to be really clear about that. Secondly, as the questioner pointed out, 150,000 vacancies in healthcare. There's also over 100,000 vacancies in social care. That is the scale of the crisis. And we need to remember that our care sector has always relied on migrants. They are its backbone. And I know this because I've worked in health and social care for more than 40 years. Privatisation is not the answer to the nation's health issues. Unlike other parties represented here today, we will not destroy the NHS by privatising it. Privatisation does not mean the NHS we had and loved is still there. It's a contradiction. A privatised national health service is not a national health service. Let's contrast it with the US. In the US, the health service does not exist to help people recover from ill health. It exists to make money out of them when they are ill. And you might want to look at the number of US healthcare companies that have been allowed to get their fingers into the NHS. Right. They have a vested interest in always making people ill, and we do not want that here. So we stand in stark contrast to the parties who will pour money into the private sector in some misguided attempt to save the NHS. The Green Party is committed to a fully public, properly funded health and social care system. We are committed to keeping the profit motive well away from the NHS. Now, when you are all holding a pencil over your ballot paper on July the 4th, remember that. Thank you.
Jay.
So we too do not take money from private healthcare profiteers. We are leading on this issue. 8,000 more GPs nationally needed, and we are funding it by taxing financial engineering. We're not putting out unfunded manifestos like some of the other parties. There may be people who contribute to our party, but we're taxing oil and gas companies, one-time tax, we're share buybacks, and that's going to raise close to £10 billion. That's how we're going to add these 8,000 GPs. Now, in terms of East Thanet, we have an issue with waiting lists, and that's why I've called for an urgent treatment center in town, which will help get rid of some of the cases and ease the waiting lists. The bigger, I think, issue here is the private agencies taking people away at 3 times the salary. Well, why can't the NHS nationally have a pool that operates like an agency at lower cost, provides doctors over the weekends, which is where the wait list really builds up, and therefore eliminates these private profiteers, as you rightly put it, because the cost structure is going up by operating this way. So we would very much look into that. The other big point here is that we also need a proper way of scheduling our appointments so that the best specialists see the most urgent cases. I was talking to people in Ramsgate where they have Crohn's disease, they've taken a blood test and they're waiting for 24 to 36 hours. But again, we're not complaining. We're finding a solution. 8,000 GPs, fully funded, a lot of that will come here, and we start an agency of our own without the private profiteers so that the costs come down. And that's how you deliver good services in towns like this, but also nationally.
Thank you, Jay.
Well, one of the things is incentivising doctors, nurses, etc. to come and work in the NHS and stay in the NHS. We've proposed that for the first 3 years of any frontline worker in the NHS, they will pay 0 income tax. After those 3 years, like everybody else in our manifesto, and also they will then go on to the way you can earn £20,000 a year without being taxed. Also, for students that come into the NHS and work in the NHS for up to 10 years, all their student debts will be written off because of their loyalty of working for you, the people, and for the NHS. We've also said to help cut the waiting list and get people seen, because we all know that if you have a chronic condition, if you need a hip replacement, a knee replacement, etc., being told it's going to take weeks and months doesn't help matters, because your condition gets worse, you get worse, and the bill for the NHS ultimately ends up being far, far bigger. You will then be able to go to a private clinic, have that treatment that you need, and then that bill will be picked up by the NHS short term so that it can be fixed. The problem, you get you back mobile, get you fit and well again, so that it doesn't then impact further upon the NHS and cause more and more heartache to you and more costs further down the road. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Sorry?
So we can't really hear you. We want to try and get through the questions. We've spent quite a long time on that question, so we're going to move on to the next one now.
Something about me. Can I hear? Sorry, can I?
You mean the second part of the question? I think Steve and Jay answered that question. Polly says not to the knowledge.
No, not to my knowledge, we don't.
Okay, thank you. Okay, on to our next question, and this is Fee O'Connor, is that right? Yep.
Okay, do you want to hold it for me? As our local MP, what do you propose to do about the National Grid's decision to build an energy converter next to a site of special scientific interest?
Okay, I think it's Helen first.
Thank you. Great question. I think it's an absolute disgrace and must not happen. So as your MP, I will fight tooth and nail against it. I am absolutely convinced that there are better sites, brownfield sites that can be used, and that's what I will fight for. I will work with my hopefully neighbouring MP Roger Gale, who has already been working very hard on this issue. We'll work together to fend this disgraceful proposal off. Our beautiful land, our lovely nature reserve needs to be protected from this terrible idea. And I think the problem with the National Grid is that they perhaps feel they have the power to, do this over the wishes of local people. And I'll be listening to you. I'll be campaigning for you on this issue. And I'll do my damnedest to deliver on this for you.
Thank you. Steve.
What will I do? Well, everything I can. I mean everything. And that includes standing in front of a digger if I have to. Right. I truly understand why Chris Packham said, "Personally, I've now reached a point where I believe breaking the law for the climate is the ethically responsible thing to do." Now, I'm not actually advocating breaking the law, but I understand where he's coming from. I really do. And be under no illusions, National Grid's proposal will destroy Minster Marshes. Right? And we've now learned that Pegwell Bay is also at risk. Firstly, I will make sure that National Grid are seen for what they actually are. They're a privately owned for-profit company. They're no different to Southern Water. Right, responsibility for our energy infrastructure, our energy needs, and the conversion to green energy needs to be with bodies that are owned by us, the people, and accountable to us, not to shareholders. Right, and National Grid, they've got their tentacles everywhere. They have a lot of money, and because of that, they've got a lot of power. And that's money that should go going back into developing the conversion to green energy and lowering your bills as well. So, if elected as your MP, I will be able to devote much more of my time and energy to saving Minster Marshes. I will be your voice in Westminster. And I urge all of you, do your part as well. If you have not yet joined the campaign to save Minster Marshes, please do. Not tomorrow, today. Do it when you get home. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Jay.
We're against it, and it's in a neighbouring constituency, but the issue is that pylons are actually a fifth of the cost than undersea cables, and we've got eels, European beavers, fauna. Look, we're putting $1 billion into protecting our farmlands, right? It's part of our fully costed budget. So we would not touch or allow anyone to touch the Minster Marshes. However, the way in which we do it is very important. We can't go off, as Steve said, and criticize National Grid, because other companies will not look at other projects here. We've got to sit with them and see what are the other options. Maybe there are other sites. What are their strategic ambitions here, and guide and have a productive conversation. Something which I don't think is happening currently with the council and some of the large capitals or large pools of investment that are coming here. So we are against it. It's against our manifesto. We absolutely want to protect our farmlands, but we would have a very open and productive discussion with National Grid while steering them in a different direction.
Thank you, Jay. Paul.
Well, apart from the fact that I personally am against it, and the fact that nobody has been asked about this, it probably won't work either, because we've seen so many of these infrastructure projects, particularly with this thing is bringing in supposed energy from wind farms and wind turbines in Suffolk through a cable under the sea, it probably won't work, and then they'll blame something else. But in the meantime, have you noticed that how so many of these green projects seem to be actually wrecking our green and pleasant land already? It's happening all the time. And then when it doesn't work, they blame something else or someone else. And the people were not asked about this. The people didn't vote for this, and the people need to stand up and say enough is enough and vote against it.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. I don't think anyone's in favour of it yet. Polly, are you in favour of it?
No, I'm not. I think what we've got to be really clear, though, is that Helen is from the party that has allowed this situation to happen for privatisation of National Grid in the first place, and has been in charge of energy infrastructure planning for the last 14 years. Let's be clear about that. Yeah. I helped set up the Department for Energy and Climate Change and contributed to phasing out coal from our energy system altogether. Paul isn't actually talking any sense whatsoever. We generate 250,000 homes worth of energy from those offshore wind farms that we've got. And we could be generating so much more, including creating jobs here. Let's be clear, the problem is National Grid is a private company that can do what it likes because we need to change the rules. Those rules need to be changed because what we need is something that sounds really boring but is actually very important, and that is a land use framework. There are 4 things we need to use our land for farming and food production, for homes, for biodiversity and for energy. At the moment, National Grid doesn't bear in mind those other 3 things and just says, right, that's the cheapest place for us to be able to connect up that energy. Those things do not factor in. I'm a climate campaigner. I've been doing this since the 1980s. When you want to knock out megatons of CO2 from your economy without it falling over, you need to be able to create jobs and understand the vital role that nature has in contributing to our climate resilience. So that is why we need to understand what is the best place for us to put the infrastructure in so that we can benefit. Let me remind you as well, those offshore wind farms, this government doesn't mind it being owned by the government, as long as somebody else's government. They're owned by Sweden. We will set up GB Energy, a publicly owned energy company, to create jobs, generate electricity and power from this country, homegrown, cheaper, wean us off Putin's oil and gas, and make sure that we have a better future for this country.
Thank you. Okay, so that was Minister Marsh's. We're now moving slightly closer to home with Manston. So we got a question from Diva Corivo. Is that right? Is she here? Lucy, do you want to ask the question?
I don't think she's here, so I'm going to ask the question. What is your position on Manston Airport? What mitigation for the damage to air quality, noise pollution, damage to tourism and wildlife would you implement?
Okay. So I think we're starting with Steve.
Okay, well, the Green Party is opposed to aviation expansion while it continues to be a source of carbon emissions, pollution and environmental damage. Right. But let's remember that the Planning Inspectorate found that the current proposals are unnecessary and unviable. We seem to have lost track of this. That is what the Planning Inspectorate found. Unnecessary, unviable proposal to have an airport at Manston. And nothing has happened to change since that decision was made. After 2 years of rigorous investigation, the examining authority, it's basically a panel of like 4 planning inspectors, and that who were appointed by the Secretary of State to conduct an examination of the application, reported that a new cargo airport is not needed, not locally, not even nationally. So, why are some of us supporting something that will damage air quality, tourism, wildlife, and cause noise pollution? Speaking to people around East Thanet, it's because we want something to believe in. We want something that makes us proud of Thanet, but it does not need to be an airport. We know the jobs are needed, and we look forward to seeing them develop in sustainable 21st century industries. Right. An example, the planned green hub at Ramsgate Port. That is something we should get behind and feel proud of. Now, even if I, as an MP, could influence the Planning Inspectorate, I would not. I wouldn't, because I wouldn't be changing the underlying evidence that they base their finding on. Manston Airport is unnecessary and unviable. Thank you.
Jay?
So this is an example of where one needs to be able to bring groups together and have some nuance in looking at this issue. It's a very sensitive issue. Most people think about the aircrafts 10 years ago. We have evolved since then. The aircraft, well, but the DCO order is in place. The DCO order is in place. It's legally owned by this entity, right? So they can do what they want. What we can do is make sure they live up to their 24 different commitments, which is on the website, but most importantly, the environmental commitments they have. There are skylarks out there that need to be accommodated, and they're going to have to work with the World Wildlife Fund, Nature England, to make sure they make that accommodation to continue. The other bigger point here is that you've got the aircraft flowing into Europe, bringing stuff over in lorries. The carbon footprint is 5 times more than if it were to land directly in Manston. So let's give these people a chance to try, because it is going to create jobs. Most importantly is the engineering jobs. You know, aircraft engineering is very, very difficult to find. The aircraft people fly to Philippines to service their aircrafts. This could be a talent pool. We could bring a talent pool here, higher paying jobs for Manston by making it a hub. It's a cargo-based strategy. There would be some short passenger aircraft as well, travel to and fro Europe. You spend £120 going to Stansted, it'll be much cheaper. Parking is going to be much cheaper by them having this in place here. The one, I think we have to remember, we are against pollution of all sorts, but they own it, right? Now we've got to have someone who can talk to them, make sure they're well capitalized. The biggest risk here is they are not well capitalized, and because of my background, as an MP, I would be able to engage with them and make sure they deliver on each of the 24 things they need to.
Paul.
Thank you. Well, I'm personally, and as a party, we're for Manston Airport. We need to obviously to generate income. We need to get this country back on its feet. But also, as others have alluded to, we need to do it in the right way. We need to ensure there will be a certain amount of disruption to local people around the airport. That has to be kept to a minimum. We have to ensure that we get the best of both worlds, where we get the economy moving, we get the services for this in it. We also create a lot of jobs for the local people around here as well. It's got very high unemployment rates, but it has to be done to the right way, and it has to be done to ensure there's minimal disruption, like things like not having night flights, that sort of thing. But I think personally it's a good thing for the area, and it's certainly a good thing nationally. I mean, you look at, I grew up in East Anglia, there's 3 airports there. You've got Norwich Airport, Southend Airport and Stansted. From a passenger point of view, people from here have to travel all the way either to Stansted or to Gatwick as the nearest airport to go anywhere. And it will generate a huge amount of income and jobs for the area, but it has to be done and managed in the right way and ensure that with a strong government in charge, that it doesn't impact as much as some people fear it will.
I think there needs to be a greater awareness about what actually Steve mentioned, is that with the MP, they can't do anything about it. The planning permission has been granted. Now it's up to the people who own it to make it work, if they think it can do. Where's the 800 million quid going to come from? How many jobs are there going to be? Do you know what? I think we deserve a bigger vision for Thanet than one project or another. If I'm your MP, I'm not going to just back one project and say that, going to bet the farm all on one thing. I think we deserve more than that. And you know why I know you deserve more than that? It's because I can see the entrepreneurial energy and the drive to be able to make ends meet and to get on and do things in this community. We have got a fantastic tourism industry. We've got a fantastic hospitality industry, some of which are really struggling in the current climate, and they should be given some opportunity to thrive. We've got amazing creative industries. We've got light industrial developments as well, and we have had more in the past that we need to be able to grow on and make more of what we actually can do in terms of renewables and a better future. So I think I'll be honest with you. You can have a champion for one project, and actually the people who will be in charge of that project won't be your MP. So they will either succeed or fail according to somebody else's ability. Or you can have somebody who will bring a community together to shape an economy, to build on our strengths, our environmental assets, our people assets, our skills, and our existing industries, as well as those of the future. So that's what I promise to you. I'm not going to back one project, I'm going to back Thanet.
Thank you, Polly. And Helen.
Thank you. So I am fully behind the reopening of Manston Airport. I think this will be a brilliant investment in our area. I think it is going to bring high-skilled, high-paid jobs, which, as Polly mentioned, we need more of. And I think, like Polly says, of course we're not just going to bet on one project for the whole area. You know, I want to make sure that our Townsdeal money is spent properly in Margate and in here in Ramsgate. I want to see the development of the Winter Gardens. I want to see the development of the harbour. It is absolutely vital that we are drawing in money from all over the place. We need as much investment as possible in our area, and we need as much investment in the future of our young people. And that means working with our further education colleges and making sure that we have the skills so that we're not having to go and find those skills from elsewhere. We need our young people to be able to fill those jobs so that they don't just go away to university and think, well, there's nothing for me in Thanet, so I'm not going to come back. Because so many people have such an affinity with where they come from, and it's nice to be able to come back. So I want them to be able to do that, to be able to get a good job, get a foot on the ladder, buy their first home, and make a future here in East Thanet.
Okay. I think that was everyone's answer, haven't they? Yes. So I lost track. Okay, we've got a question now from James Newing. Is James here? Yes, right at the front here. Wait for the microphone.
Hi, I'd just like to thank all the candidates this evening, as I can imagine it's not that easy being up there answering all these questions. So we all appreciate your time. Okay. We have had migrant boats land in Ramsgate and along the south coast. Many believe this to be a serious security risk. What is your plan to stop these boats, protect our borders, and deport illegal immigrants? Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Jay.
So we were in favor of the Dublin Agreement, which allowed you to take the illegal immigrant boats, reverse them, and send them back to France. Post-Brexit, we are not able to do that. You can't, the larger vessels as well, you can't send back. So just to be clear, right, we had, by having Brexit, and that's not just the Conservatives, you've got to blame Reform as well, or UKIP for that. What we have achieved is less flexibility in being able to return migrants. So what are we going to do about it? We have called for a dedicated processing center where within 3 months you will be judged as whether you're acceptable or returned back through, but while providing safe passage. Look, the problem here is that we have to tackle this in Sangatte, not in Thanet. We are committed much earlier than we were previously in the channel to pick up these migrants. It becomes our responsibilities much earlier than it was when we were part of the European Union. So, but we are where we are. The money that we've raised in our fully funded plan would create these dedicated processing centers, and in that processing center, if it's beyond 3 months, there are some skill shortages we have. There are doctors out there. Maybe we can, give them a tax code, and as long as they don't take TANF jobs, put them to work as well, so they're off the benefit check. But the most important thing here is to get back to a situation where France and Europe are responsible for this, and we have the flexibility to return these migrants back, illegal migrants. By the way, they're just 4%. Most of the immigration is legal immigration, right? So for that we have a skill-based, merit-based system where, based on paperwork, we will limit migrants based on the skills we need. And therefore, that will bring the numbers down as well.
Okay, thank you. Paul.
Thank you. Well, I mean, this is the fault of successive governments that we've had, and nothing will change unless we actually really have a mind to do something about it. We have said, no doubt, many of you have read about it, we have said we will leave the ECHR. We will repeal the Human Rights Act, and we will turn the boats back. We've been Rishi stood on this, that he will stop the boats. We've had more than ever coming over. We've probably had hundreds more today. We've had 800 a day for the last couple of days, come over 300, I think, something yesterday. And it's not stopping, no matter what they say. And this has a massive knock-on effect to everything else in the UK, whether it's security. Your question was security, sir. But also, it's not just security. It has a knock-on effect to housing, to policing, to absolutely all different walks of our life. It has a massive knock-on effect. People may disagree, but if that wasn't the case, we wouldn't be in the situation that we are now. And I think we can probably all agree on that what happens now is that we have to get a proper grip of this problem that we have, and I think that Reform UK are the only people that will actually get a grip of it and do something about it instead of just talking about it.
Okay, Polly.
I think we need to address this with both morality and practicality. And I think the idea that we would leave the European Court of Human Rights that we set up after the Second World War, instrumentally involving Winston Churchill, that we would think that it would be okay for us to leave an international institution that protects human rights. The clue is in the title. They apply to all humans, and that is essential. Now, I'm in a church, that's okay, that's all good old-time religion, right? We also have to be practical about how we apply our morality. This is about my British values. My wife's mother came here and had her passport taken away from Spain. She came from Spain, had her passport taken away and lived in a Nissan hut picking potatoes. This has been happening for a long time, and we know that our community and our country is built on the hard work of people who want to be able to give, and we need to be very clear about that. We also have two fundamental questions. Do we need them, or do they need us? And yes, there are lots of questions that flow from that, but fundamentally we can start there. Some people are fleeing terrible situations. Some people could fill gaps in our workforce. I don't think you fill gaps in your workforce in a random way by who can afford to pay a criminal gang to get them across the channel. Instead, we should be having a planned way of recruiting people who we need for our workforce and our economy, and we give good protection to people who are genuinely fleeing conflict. That's why we will end the Rwanda scheme, spend the money on a border command force, including the special services and MI5. We will make sure that we end the abuse of hotels, speed up that process, make sure that we work with our neighbours, and take our international responsibility seriously on tackling the things that drive this big movement of people across the world, which is conflicts and climate change.
Helen.
Thank you. Well, I think you probably all know what the Conservative policy on stopping the boats is. And you probably also know that as the Safety of Rwanda bill and all other previous bills went through Parliament, they were opposed at every step by the Liberal Democrats and Labour. Now, the reason... The reason that we need a policy is because none of these guys so far have addressed actually stopping the boats in the first place. You can process them faster, you can say that you won't put them in hotels, you can make all those promises. I have to say, I would be very surprised if anybody on this bench here is actually able to find the homes for those people. In my role on the council where I previously lived, I was in charge of migration in our area. And I can tell you that Serco, on behalf of the Home Office, was buying up all the private rented properties in the area at a certain level of cost, which meant that it was stopping local people from being able to get on the housing ladder, get a private rented property. You would not believe how difficult that became. So we have to do something about this. I don't think anybody, you ask anybody, do they really think we can take the level of migration we've got at the moment? And I understand the small boats is a small part of that, and legal migration is a larger part of that, but there needs to be a policy to deal with it, because these are people who are paying to be illegally smuggled into our country by gang runners, and they are putting themselves at huge risk. They're coming through many safe countries before they take that massive risk, and it's not a risk they should be taking. Okay, so we need a deterrent policy, and Rwanda is that deterrent policy.
Okay. Steve, do you want to give a final response to this question?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank Polly for some of the things she said, because I'm going to echo a few of them. And first of all, this is a moral issue, and we need to address the root causes, and the root causes are conflict and climate change around the world. And climate change is just going to get worse. If we don't address that, this is not an issue that's going to get resolved. Right? And exactly, what on earth are we even thinking of proposing to leave the ECHR? Right? It's one of the institutions set up in the aftermath of the Second World War. Right? What else will the Green Party do? We'll stop doing what doesn't work. As Paul said, there seem to be more and more people trying to come to this country, coming to this country on small boats across the channel every day. So the current strategies are not working. Right? Now, we, the Green Party, we welcome the contribution that migrants and refugees make to British society, particularly me, my background working in the health service. And we want to be welcoming to promote social cohesion and support migrants to put down roots. Right. We do want to end what gets termed this hostile environment. Right. We want to end I need to put my reading glasses on all of a sudden. We do need to end the minimum income requirements for spouses of those holding work visas. Right. And we do want safe routes for those fleeing persecution. Otherwise, people out of desperation will resort to unsafe routes. Increasingly, we are seeing that. The Home Office has become dysfunctional. It needs to be replaced with a new Department of Migration. We will can't get my words out now. We will put an end to immigration detention for all migrants unless they are a danger to public safety. Right? Because those seeking asylum and protection, they should be permitted to work while their application has been decided. We want those people contributing to our society and our economy, not being a drain on it, and they don't want to be a drain on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. We're running out of time. It'd be good to see if we can get through at least two more questions. So can I ask the candidates be quite quick and short? So sorry? No, sorry, because we asked people to produce questions beforehand.
We didn't hear anything about that. It wasn't publicised. We thought we would come to a hustings which enabled the audience to address the candidates. This is a state-managed event. It is not.
Okay, it was made very clear in all the publicity. Thank you. So, for our last couple of questions, if we can get through a couple of questions quickly, that'd be good. So, can we have the question from Neil Gunn? Is he here to ask, or is someone going to ask for him? I'm going to ask that question. Okay, let me ask the question. Okay, so some of the candidates do not have addresses in Thanet. How can the candidates who do not have addresses in Thanet assure that they will represent the constituents if elected, when there will be absent MPs with no on-the-ground experience of living in East Thanet? Okay, so I believe there are eight candidates standing. The three independents are all locals, I think. I think Steve's local.
I'm very local.
The rest of you have maybe not quite so local. But let's have an answer from Paul, first of all.
Well, I live in Kent. I live just outside of Sittingbourne. I'm a professional photographer. I've been self-employed for nearly 30 years. I have many clients in Thanet. Last weekend I was at the Classic Car Show at Westwood Cross. I do lots of photography for them. I'm in and out of Thanet all the time. Not only are my kids born in Kent, but they go to school in Kent, and I work all over Kent. So I know not just with Thanet, but I know what it's like to live and work in Kent. And that's something that I will hope to bring as an MP for you, but not just as a Thanet MP, as an MP up in Westminster fighting for the whole of the UK. But because what happens up there affects everybody, from whether it's from Thanet to Thurrock, right up to the north of England. What they decide, and very often what they won't let you vote on, affects every area of this country. But I'm 30 minutes away. I could say to you, I'll buy a house in the constituency, but I'm 30 minutes away. It's not, I'll have an office in the constituency, you can come and see me regularly. But I won't waste money, well, especially taxpayers' money, by buying a house that I don't need when I live 30 minutes away.
Okay, Polly, you can keep the answers brief.
Don't worry, the taxpayer, he's not allowed to, so that's close enough. All right. Look, I love this place. I first started campaigning here in 2022, so I've been campaigning for this ever since, much longer than anybody else on this platform, in order to be able to become your MP. Now, look, I know that that I'm not coming to this on a short notice, on a punt. I've been committed to this for a long time. I was lucky enough when I chose Thanet that Labour Party members here chose me. Now I'm asking you to choose me. And the reason, I live in Hackney, I'll tell you, I live in Hackney. I'm conducting 75,000 job interviews, door to door. If I'm successful at those job interviews, I will, of course, move here. I've been listening and leading this conversation for a very long time, and I'm absolutely committed to Thanet for the reason that I think I have something to offer. I think I have something to offer here. I've got experience of Westminster, I've got experience of Whitehall. If you want somebody who knows how to navigate those corridors in order to be able to benefit Thanet, then I'm asking you to choose me. Because actually Thanet needs somebody who's going to speak up for it. It's been neglected and overlooked for far too long, and that's what I'm asking you to do.
Okay, thank you, Polly. Helen.
Thank you. Well, it's very simple. I was selected at short notice because obviously we thought that Craig McKinley was going to be fighting this seat, and sadly he's not able to. So I was selected to be the candidate in his place 3 weeks ago. I was selected on a Sunday night and I moved here on the Monday morning. And that is my commitment to East Thanet. I think it is absolutely preposterous for an MP or even a wannabe MP to not get themselves stuck into the community and become part of that community. So I'm not pretending to you that I'm from here. You know that I'm not. You know that I'm from Northamptonshire. But my commitment to you is that I'm here and I'm here to stay. And by the way, just in case any of you, it seems to have ruffled a few feathers that I've moved straight here. Because when I'm on the doorstep, people keep telling me, we hear that you don't live here. We've been told you don't live here. So somebody is out there trying to tell people I don't live here, even though I do, in beautiful Palm Bay.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Steve?
First of all, I'd just like to say something to the gentleman in the second row. I don't know what your question is, but I'm free to talk to me afterwards, okay? And you could argue this question isn't relevant for me because I've lived in Thanet for over 9 years, but I'm still going to take the opportunity to share a few things with you. I moved here because I love it, not to become an MP. Right. And I'm a Broadstairs and St Peter's Town Councillor. I've got the life experience to understand people, communities, the challenges they face, and what they would expect from an MP. Right. On July the 5th, if I'm your MP, I'll continue to live in Thanet and I will continue to love Thanet. On July the 5th, if I'm not your MP, I'll continue to live in Thanet and I'll continue to love to live in Thanet. And I'll still be a town councillor and I'll be holding your MP to account. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
So I'm not being parachuted in. I came here, I looked at this beautiful island, I talked to the chairman of the local party, and we saw that my skill base and my experience in helping revive the port marina, bring international investment in, bring new jobs. You can talk till you're blue about what you will do, but you actually need to have the experience to control the sewage companies who are highly leveraged, have a flawed capital structure, which is why we have these problems. To be able to be a champion for the community and really ask the right questions of Manston. So I bring a set of experience which I think is very relevant to Thanet at this time, notwithstanding the fact that, you know, I fell in love with the place as I saw it, the 3 beautiful beaches, and yet we are underperforming relative to our potential. I do live in London, in East Finchley, and I pledge to you, if I'm your MP, I will move here, although what you need is, you had an MP here, you have a Labour Council and a Conservative MP, all right? Did they push back on the housing targets when they were set? Did they go and be proactive in Westminster, as they should have been, in order to control one of the biggest problems? You actually need someone who understands the issues here, but is connected abroad.
Answering the question. Should we just try and squeeze? Let's just try to squeeze one last question in from Oscar Ellis. Is Oscar here able to ask a question? So we're running out of time, so we can be fairly quick in answering the question. But
hello. I am 17 years old, and I'm a politics student at Chatham Clarendon Grammar School. My question's about elections, and the question is, why shouldn't I be able to vote in the upcoming election and the ones in the future?
Okay, thank you, Oscar. So can I just ask, is anyone else here under 18 and not able to vote in the upcoming election? There's a few of you here. Do you know Oscar from class? Anyone here is voting for the first time this election? So there's a few there as well. So there are some younger people here. That's great. So answering this question then, who are we going to? Polly?
You should be able to. We've got that commitment in our manifesto to lower the age of voting to 16. I know a lot of older people think that young people shouldn't necessarily have the right to do so, but I think it's more important than ever that we have the voice of young people in our politics, and that we give them the opportunity to be able to help shape and make the decisions for the future. Because frankly, we are handing on quite a legacy to them, aren't we? And don't you think that we should make sure that they are able to shape their future? Because I wouldn't say that necessarily our generations have necessarily been making the best hash of it. So I think we should be making sure that young people are able to take part, make sure that they can make those decisions, and restore the citizenship classes that we used to have under a Labour government, so that people are able to actively take part in politics and feel comfortable about doing so. One of the worst conversations I have with people who are sometimes in their 20s, 30s or even older is to say, oh, I don't really know anything about that. I say, I do this so that you don't have to. Literally, representative democracy is lending me the opportunity to make decisions on your behalf that are big and difficult. I don't know whether I'm going to be able to help you with everything. I don't even know whether I'm going to get everything done that I'd like to do. But I do think people like Oscar should have the opportunity to shape the decisions that will shape his future.
Thank you. Helen.
Hi, Oscar.
Okay. Okay, let's go on to Helen's.
Yeah, sorry. Hi.
Thanks, it's a good point, well made, thank you.
Separation. Oscar, thanks for the question, and I'm really sorry. I believe that the voting age should remain at 18. I believe there are a huge number of things that we consider people below the age of 18 to still be a child, a young adult, a young person, but not able to make certain decisions for themselves. So, for example, to be able to go and buy alcohol is a very simple one. There are a lot of things that we believe as adults that we need to make decisions for you. And I think that we need to stick with adulthood as being that point in time at which you can be able to vote. Because I just ask you, if you can vote at 16, why can't you vote at 15? Why can't you vote at 14? At what point do we decide that a person has the capacity to be able to make those decisions? Now, that doesn't mean that I have no interest in you and what you think, because I'm sure you're going to be a very well-informed young man who wants to make decisions for himself. I want to listen to what you have to say. Because let's face it, I'm going to be really honest with you right now. The Conservative Party has completely lost the votes of young people. I want to listen to you. I want to deliver for you. I want to be the person that regains your trust because I do the right things for you. So just because I don't believe you should vote just yet doesn't mean that I won't listen to what you have to say.
Thank you, Helen. Steve.
Yeah, Oscar, I mean, at the age of 16, someone can join the army, then get a job and pay taxes, so you're old enough to vote. It's that simple.
Oscar, thanks for the question. Currently, it is 18. I have no objection to it being lowered if you want it to be lowered. I don't think the general populace do. I don't think the general public do at the moment. That's something we would have to consult on, because I think that, at the moment, 18 is the age of criminal responsibility as well, and there's lots of other things, like colleagues said here, that you can't buy alcohol until you're 18, things like that. So it would have to encompass all of those things, I think, not just to be able to vote under that age. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. Jane.
From the get-go, we've been very clear that 16-year-olds should be allowed to vote. You're going to be 21 by the time the next election comes, right? That's a whole experience. You're looking, or 22, 4 years from now. But you have a say in the future, and we believe you have the maturity to do that. Look, we are increasingly getting divided. You need to have a say in bringing our communities back, bringing our economy back, and indeed, we are, for that reason, very much want you to participate, because, all the plans and whatever we've talked about, jobs, communities, immigration, you're going to be the coalface, you're going to be the ones impacting from the benefits of it or from the negative decisions we make. So absolutely, you should be part of the voting process.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Okay, it's now nearly 9 o'clock, so I'm just inviting the candidates to give a short summary feedback. Sorry, we've run out of time, so I'm going to have to be strict on that.
I'm perfectly happy to answer this question afterwards. I don't know which meeting you're talking about. I wasn't there. I don't recognise anything you're talking about. But I'm very happy to take it afterwards, because interrupting this meeting is not actually the way that these things should be conducted.
Okay. So shall we start with Steve again, if you can give us a short summary, please.
Yeah, so if you like what you've heard from me about why I'll be a good MP, housing and the local plan, saving the NHS from privatisation, saving Minster Marshes, giving Thanet something to be proud of, more than one thing to be proud of, but not an airport. Right. What I would bring, to the role, having lived in Thanet for 9 years, and I need to mention that we are the party that supports rejoining the EU as soon as possible. Right. So, if you like what you've heard, vote for real change. Vote Green.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Jay.
So we are at an inflection point right, in the country, but also in this island. We're moving right in terms of divisive rhetoric, in terms of immigration, but no one really has an economic plan. We've had taxes. We don't want taxes put on us by a Labour Council and a Labour government. I'm dead against the VAT on independent school fees. There are a lot of aspirational parents who are going to suffer from that, a lot of middle-class parents who are going to suffer from that. And that is what we want to prevent by being in the center. And we have a program for investing in GPs, in 8,000 of them, and we're funding it by taxing financial engineering, but not taxing the individual. Thanet needs new jobs in its industrial estates. It needs a revival. We have to deal with the companies that are here, not alienate them, but yet protect our farmlands, our environmental agenda, and make sure as a unified group we grow and progress, because that is what Thanet, with a 9% unemployment rate for its youth, is lacking. And we are committed to reverse that.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Paul.
Unlike others I've set up here, I'm not a professional politician. I haven't been in the hallowed halls of Westminster. I'm a normal person, like many of you. I'm self-employed, I run a business, and I live in the real world. And we've all seen for the last 14 years, and then the 14 years prior to that, just where all these professional politicians have brought the country to. It's about time we had real change, because so many people are saying to me out on the streets that there's enough is enough now. We've had enough. They've had their chance. They've broken their promises, and we need to vote for Reform UK on the 4th of July.
Polly.
Thank you. Well, as I said, I was a journalist for a long time. I worked at the BBC, and I spent a lot of time reporting on injustice until I found that what I was doing wasn't enough, because I wasn't doing enough about it, which is why I ended up doing this. I saw what was wrong every day, and I believe that genuinely that it doesn't have to be like this, that change is possible. Now, the reality is I've helped to make that change. Like I was talking about with coal phase-out, from cleaner air in dirty cities to solar panels on council homes, those things are different in this country because of things that I have done. I've changed things. If you want somebody who knows how to change things, then I'm asking for your support. Who makes decisions matters. This is your chance to decide who that is. Someone with a track record of campaigning on things that matter to you. All of the things we've been talking about tonight are absolutely the bread and butter of the campaigns that I have been conducting over decades. Someone who can speak up for Thanet because I've been listening for a long time and hearing what you say and being able to build a campaign on the basis of those priorities, particularly about bringing together a community that back in 2015 was deeply divided. And I know you know that Thanet can be better than that, and that's what I'm offering. I'll be honest, there are so many things that need fixing, from the potholes to the NHS. I'm not suggesting we can get this stuff done quickly, but at least we can have some basic start to this. Tackling the cost of living crisis with stability in our economy, creating jobs for our young people, a carefully costed plan with cutting NHS waiting times, that border command force for us to be confident about our borders, 6,500 teachers paid for shamelessly by an end to a VAT tax break on private schools that only educate 7% of this population, and we deserve to make sure that the other 93% get what they need. I believe in that strongly, and that's why I ask you to support me in becoming your MP.
And finally, Helen.
Thank you. So I hope what you've all seen here tonight is 5 very passionate people who care enough to put their heads above the parapet and ask for your vote. It's a really, really tough thing to do. And you won't see this particularly, but we all get a lot of abuse every single day on social media, generally, rather than face-to-face. People don't tend to have the courage to do it to you face-to-face. And so we have to be very tough. I'm not tough. I'm really not tough. I grew up incredibly shy. I couldn't say boo to a goose. The fact that I'm sitting in front of you trying to ask you for your vote is pretty much miraculous, to be honest with you, because it's been a really difficult thing for me to do. And the reason I'm doing it is because I really, really care and I want to improve the world that I live in. So that is why I ask for your vote. And I would just like to say that all of these other guys are also standing here for really good and honourable reasons. And I hope if you can go out of this church tonight and pass on to a few of your friends that we're normal human beings, that we care, we're not evil, we're not corrupt, we're not horrible, we're all people who really, really want to stand up and help this community. So please, if you go out of here with that in your hearts, I'll be really proud of taking part tonight.
Well, can I thank all the candidates for coming tonight and for speaking. And as Helen says, it's not easy putting yourself forward to lead in any respect. And you always have to make difficult decisions not everyone will agree with, and you'll get criticism for it. I'm sure whichever of you gets elected as MP will be criticised in all sorts of ways. But we're really grateful that you're willing to put yourselves through that and take that step forward. And we really pray and hope that the rest of the election campaign will go well, and the votes will be cast in a wise and good way on the 4th of July. So thank you once again. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for those that have submitted. Thank you for those who submitted questions. Sorry we couldn't cover all the questions, but thank you very much for being with us. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.